Fighting with Gradle, the dark night of the Antarctic, Groovy Dad Jokes, and the usual assortment of silly tweets, toots, and skeets. Welcome to this week's edition of Tales from the Jar Side. Don't have time or interested in reading my newsletter? That's fine, I'll be happy to read it to you. This week, the title was as stated. The subtitle was, What Kind of Key Opens the Door to a Haunted House? A spooky. Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's Halloween, tomorrow's Halloween. I had to go there a little bit. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of October 22nd through 29th, 2023. My name is Ken Cousin, and I'll be your host for this edition. This week I taught my Making New Java Features Work for You course on the O'Reilly Learning Platform, as well as my regular software design course for undergraduates at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. Regular readers of and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and of course attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the button supplied. That gives us our opportunity to take a look at the YouTube channel and see how that's doing. Here is the companion YouTube channel. And what you can see here is that I am up to 840 subscribers. So that's great. That's making progress. Seems to be getting there. I'm still kind of hoping that we can hit 1,000 in a reasonable amount of time. I mean, we're already at the end of October, so 2 months to make it to the end of the year. I don't know about that. That may be asking a lot unless I happen to do something that goes viral. Now, that's going to be a lot easier if I actually make more videos. And this week, I did not get a chance to make a technical video. I'm going to describe one that I had in mind, but I'm not sure it really belongs as a video of its own. So if you have any opinions about that, please let me know. Okay, back to the newsletter itself. So I titled this section, I Fought Gradle and Gradle Won, except it didn't quite won, it almost won. It's a bit of a complex story, and this is what I want to tell you about, so let me know how this comes across to you. Now, it started with a kind of an amusing story for me. I had a conversation with my son, my adult son. I mean, it's not a kid. He says, you're a Gen Xer, right? And I said, no, I'm a boomer. He said, really? I said, yeah, the cutoff for boomers is 1965, and I was born in 1962, so that makes me a boomer. He said, you don't seem like a boomer. You're not angry enough, which I thought, okay, that brings up a whole host of questions, but all right. What it really meant to me, however, this week is that he was not around when I was fighting with Gradle late in the week. I get it that boomers seem to exude a certain minimum level of anger at the world. Yeah, all right. But I did have this problem. So this week I was working with some of my legacy projects and trying to upgrade them to Java 21, the latest version, which was released back in September, so about a month ago. And I upgraded everything in my build, including Gradle. So I'm using Gradle 8.4, and I started getting this weird little error. It says deprecated Gradle features were used in this build, making it incompatible with Gradle 9. Now, again, Gradle's only at 8.4, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there'll only be a handful of versions before 9. You could have a dozen of them. I have no idea how they're planning to work it. That could be a long time away, but yeah, something apparently has changed. And it says you could use -- warning mode all to show the individual deprecation warnings and determine if they come from your scripts or plugins. Now, to give you an idea what this looks like, here's just an example of a Gradle build that I have been doing for a while for part of my Java upgrade course that I teach to people learning how to use streams and lambdas and method references. And I'll do this from the command line because it'll show up a bit better that way. Let me clear this. And I want to run say clean and test. I mean, I know I could do it from within the IDE, but let me just run it here just to show you what the output looks like. And there's the complaint. Deprecated Gradle features were used in this build, making it incompatible with Gradle 9, and then the business about putting the warning mode all. Now, there's a way to run the flag warning mode all inside the IDE, and it's a little complicated. Again, it's just easier if I do it directly at the command line. So that's the same line with the warning mode all on it. And when I ran that, then it says the actual problem. It says the automatic loading of test framework implementation dependencies has been deprecated. This is scheduled to be removed in Gradle 9. Declare the desired test framework directly on the test suite, or explicitly declare the test framework implementation dependencies on the test runtime class path. Consult the upgrading guide for further information, and they give you a little link. Now, I've read that a few times, and I think I know what it means now. At first, I just clicked on the link. Now, if you click on the link, this is what you wind up finding. Now, this is from the Gradle upgrade notes, upgrading from an earlier version of 8.x to the current one. And it says, in some cases, Gradle will load the JVM test framework dependencies from the Gradle distribution. And that could lead to version conflicts on the test class path. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why that's a problem. I just want to use the latest one. I don't see an issue there. And I've never had to deal with this before. It says, but to avoid these conflicts, this behavior is deprecated and will be removed in Gradle 9. So they recommend we move to the new hotness, which they call Test Suites. I'll come back to that. But down below, if you scroll down, they say, okay, in the short run, all you have to do is explicitly state test runtime only org.junit.platform : junit-platform-launcher. And I'm using JUnit 5. So let's take a look at that. And you can see here, I have it commented out. Let me uncomment that and resynchronize the project with that build. And I will rerun my task here again. And you will notice warning goes away. Everything's working. And if that's all there was to it, this would be annoying, not because it's a problem, but because it means every existing build I have would have to have that line added to it. Or I'll have to just start doing what's more likely to happen, which is I'll just kind of ignore that warning. And that can't be what they want, because then when we hit Gradle 9, a warning I've been ignoring for however long will suddenly make everything break. Like, oh, cripes. All right, fine. At least I know how to fix this. But what's this deal with test suites anyway? So let's go take a look at that for a moment. So I found this post on the Gradle blog that introduced the idea of test suites. Now, I remember test suites back in the day when JUnit was still kind of shiny and new as simply a way to group a bunch of tests so that you ran them all together. And nowadays, we don't need anything complicated like that. You can just select them in your IDE or run them in a folder. Or there's lots of ways in Gradle to select tests based on a pattern. So I wasn't sure where they were going with this. And what they ultimately pointed out was that in many cases, you'd like to have different, completely different categories of tests: functional tests, integration tests, performance tests, and your regular unit tests, all with separate directories and, in principle, separate dependency libraries. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I could see that. When I've run integration tests in the past, I've just put the dependencies in my regular testing dependencies anyway. You know, it's never caused a problem before, but I could see how maybe you might want to separate those out. And I have used plugins that, for example, created an integration test subdirectory or source set, as you would say, and arranged things that way. Well, now they're getting into that with some detail, and they talk about how complicated it would be to do it by hand and say, all right, here's a better way now, and they go through some examples. Let me show you an example that I put together based on their suggestions. So this is a trivial little example which I just called Test Suites, and I made it by creating a new Gradle project, and that's something the blog post points out. If you want to try this new mechanism, then just use Gradle init and agree to use an incubating feature. So I said, okay, go ahead, and here's what I got. And what you'll see here is that I have a block now called testing. Let me get that out of the way. And under suites, we have this little test variable that comes from a getter. That's where you put your use JUnit Jupyter method. And now I have an integration test block as well, which is another type of JVM test suite. And here are my testing libraries for the integration tests. Now that's more than I actually need, but I did want to separate these out. So the first one is just using a trivial unit test. And this one, in order to have something to do at integration time, I brought in the dependencies for the wonderful test containers library. The test containers library is a fantastic project that allows you to run tests on dependencies that you don't even have installed locally, because this basically will download and install them through a Docker container. So I'm going to use PostgreSQL as a database, and I don't have PostgreSQL installed locally. I would use Oracle or whatever. With test containers, very effective that way. But this is a natural integration test, is to test with something I don't have available locally, which in principle would be in the deployed system. Also, they suggested that I could go ahead and customize my targets so that the test task would run after the integration test, or rather the integration test would run after the test task if I asked for them both together. And then we'll come back to this, but we also made the check task depend on the integration testing suite. So all of this was auto-generated or slightly customized or taken directly out of the blog post or the companion section in Gradle. And what this generates is that I have a source set called integration test, and this has my customer service test in it. You can see I'm using a Postgres container. This is a container, test containers. Again, take a look at the test containers documentation. This is basically their example. And if you looked at the actual app, then there's a database connection provider and a customer service that creates a table and populates it, and then executes some SQL for me, all this stuff. And the bottom line is that I could run unit tests and I could run integration tests separately. If you look under the reports section, you'll see I have a section called test, which is where the output test report will be for the unit tests. And if I bring that up, you'll see here that there's only one unit test available, only one test. It's the one called app test. App has a greeting that, again, the Gradle build generated. Whereas if I look under integration test, here's the output report, and you'll see that has two tests, which were my customer service tests. One just to make sure everything was running, and one that says, yes, I was able to get customers. If you look at the standard output, you can see the Docker client pulling the image and running with the image. And it's actually rather quick because it's already pulled down image and everything's cached locally. So this one works really, really well. And again, if I had just left everything at this point, I'd be fine because I used their test suites, and that's great. But no, I kept reading. And if you scroll down a bit in that blog post, they talk about the future, and they say you'll also definitely want to check out the test report aggregation plugin added in Gradle 7.4 to see how to easily aggregate the results of multiple test task invocations into a single HTML report. Okay. Long story short, yeah, I know, too late, but long story short, I could not, no matter what I did, get those two test reports to be merged into a single output. If you look at all the examples for the test report aggregation plugin, they're all about doing tests over multiple sub-projects and merging the sub-project reports. So if I had multiple sub-projects that all had unit tests, I could get a single unit test report. Or if they all had integration tests, I could get a single integration test report. I could not find any way to get them to merge the unit test reports with the integration test reports. And that's what you're seeing over here under my integration dash test and my unit dash test. Those were produced by the test aggregation plugin, and they're the same as before. They don't show anything new. And I must have spent, I don't know, a day and a half on this. And I even went on the Gradle forums and asked and got one answer which was completely wrong, and then I kind of gave up on it. And in the newsletter, this is where I pointed out, first of all, I described the situation here. If you're interested, you could see how I fixed it and all of that. And then the business about the aggravation plugin. No, it's the aggregation plugin. And let's just get down to the bottom line. The bottom line is that, first of all, now I have to add that extra dependency to all of my old builds or get used to ignoring that warning until things break, which is so Gradle. They improve the product, and yet now it's more code for me, and I've got to go figure out how to do other things, and it's just getting hard to keep up with it. And most people don't want to go and update all of their old builds just so that they can keep Gradle from giving it a warning. And it wouldn't even get easy to find out what actually was wrong, because most people don't know how to put a command line flag on a Gradle task if it's run inside the IDE. So even that was a bit of a challenge. So I just mentioned in my frustration that Android had already kind of driven me away by constantly changing the framework and breaking everything that already existed. And it was just getting really frustrating. I was getting tired of Gradle doing the same. The only problem is the major alternative to Gradle would be Maven, and I'm not going there unless I have to or unless a client insists on it. So at any rate, that's what all that was about. And I considered making a video about it, but it's not a happy video, and I wasn't exactly sure how to phrase everything. Let me know what you think. I am considering making a video about these Gradle Test Suites, because that might be something valuable. And when I looked for that on YouTube, I didn't find many people talking about that yet. There's older stuff, but nothing recent about it. So that may be coming. Look for that. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel, because that is going to be my plan. I will have everybody subscribe, and then I will make a video about Gradle Test Suites, and you may be interested in seeing that. If you want to learn how to use Gradle Test Suites, then that's one way to stay in touch. Okay, moving on. Now to happier subjects. The dark night of the Antarctic. I've mentioned in this newsletter before, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, that DALL-E 3 is a huge improvement over DALL-E 2. It's so much nicer to use. And I'm still waiting for it to be available via the API. I want to be able to access it programmatically, and that's not doable yet. Now, OpenAI is having their big one-day conference next week, I think, and I'm hoping they'll announce something there, but I haven't heard anything yet. The way you have to access DALL-E 3 now is either to go through Bing Chat, and once again, I'm not doing that, or you can go to regular ChatGPT, and if you're a subscriber under GPT-4, you can select DALL-E 3. And I've been playing with that. And I used to programmatically send in a prompt like a penguin dressed as Batman fighting crime in the Antarctic. Well, I used to get results. They weren't very good results, and occasionally they'd be okay. Well, in DALL-E 3, it turns out that what you put in as your prompt is not the prompt that actually gets executed. This is integrated into GPT-4, so it tries to take your prompt and generate what it thinks you really wanted. So this is actually good and bad. It's bad because it's not really executing what you thought you said. It's good because prompt engineering is kind of a specialty skill that I don't know if that's a good thing to have or not. It is nice that it already can figure out how to make a prompt that DALL-E will understand much better. At least they tell you what prompt got generated. That's good. So this time, however, I didn't get either one. I apologize, but due to our content policy, I was unable to generate images based on the provided description. Please provide a new request or let me know if you'd like assistance with another topic. I'm like, really? That's a problem? A Batman? It's not allowed to do that? So I thought, all right, I tried again, got the same answer. So this time I went, all right, give me a penguin dressed as the Dark Knight fighting crime in the Antarctic. And here's an image it gave me. And that is just gorgeous. That may be my favorite auto-generated image ever. The actual prompt I put in the caption says an illustration of a penguin donning a Dark Knight-themed attire. A Dark Knight-themed attire. Okay, in the Antarctic, with its cape billowing The penguin assumes a heroic stance on the frozen tundra, prepared to safeguard its territory. Yeah, okay, I get that. I even love the fact those look like birds in the background, although they're awfully small. It's kind of hard to read. I'd like to believe they were bats, but okay, in front of the full moon, no less. Isn't that what that is? It's just great, and that's got to be the angriest looking penguin I've ever seen. It's like, cool. Wonderful job. In fact, as I said, you can almost hear the original Danny Elfman Batman theme song when you look at it. I put in a link to the YouTube video with the theme song from Batman 1989. Do you believe that's how long it's been since the original Michael Keaton movie? I won't play it here, but you're welcome to take a listen if you're interested. I tried to, I said I can't help wondering how the penguin gets into the compartments of his utility belt using flippers, but it's backwind, so I'm sure he'd find a way. The result appears that there are now guardrails against copyright infringement. More about that later in DALL-E 3, but they're pretty low. It wasn't exactly hard to get around it. I tried saying Superman watching over the city by night and got the same error message, but when I changed it to the Man of Steel watching over the city by night, I got what is basically Superman. That S is not quite an S. It's pretty close. In fact, what I got was that picture and a warning suggesting that it depended on how literally it took that phrase as to whether we got an error or not. Okay. I did try, by the way, Underdog watching over the city by night. And let me show you the result of that too. Actually, here you can see the different results. This was the Dark Knight watching over the city by night. So I just tried to go with the Batman ones, and those look Batman-like. I don't have any issue with that. And then I tried Superman, and it said no. So I tried Underdog, and this, well, it's right except for the fact he's got an S instead of a U, So that's pretty close. And apparently Underdog doesn't give you the same error. And this one, I have no idea what the sparkling ears and all of that. That's not Underdog, and it's Christmas lights or something. Okay. Photo of a toy figure representing Underdog perched on a miniature rooftop overlooking a model city. It lit up by tiny lights. The backdrop is a dark, starry night. Okay. I guess that's pretty good, but not what I expected. Here's the one with Man of Steel watching over the city by night and an error. So then I tried various other things as well. Keep an eye out. I'll be playing with those in the future. Back to the newsletter now. This section is called Groovy Dad Jokes. Paul King, who is, my personal hero. I've been a fan of Paul King ever since I got involved in Groovy at all, and that was back in 2008, maybe 9. He's the head of the Groovy programming language. He published a new blog post on the Groovy blog. So here's the Groovy blog itself. It's at Apache, groovy.apache.org/blogs, and he's got all of his blog posts here. Maybe when he says blogs, he means blog posts, but so be it. And the most recent one here is called ChatGPT meets Groovy one-liners. Let me magnify that a bit. And he basically asked GPT for various dad jokes, and then he would try to illustrate them in Groovy. So I don't know what prompt he actually put in there, but he talked about it. And it's like, here's one. Why do programmers always mix up Christmas and Halloween? Because 25 dec is the same as 31 oct, right? 25 in decimal is 25. 31 in octal would be 3 24s plus 1, 3 eighths plus, which is 24, plus 1 is 25. So yeah, it's an old gag. And of course, in Java and in Groovy, if you want to put an octal literal, you start with a leading 0. And those of us who live in New England are kind of sensitive to this because our zip codes start with a 0. So people who try to store that as an int wind up going into octal when they didn't mean to. Yeah, at any rate. So at any rate, this was the blog post, and I pointed out a couple of them like that one. There's the regular expression for US zip codes anyway. You know, addresses around the world are so different. This was pretty good. If life gives you melons, you may be dyslexic. How did that happen? Well, if you take the word melons and you access the index elements in it, 2.0 would start at index 2 and walk backwards to index 0. So that's LEM. And then index 3 is starting at O, and ... -1 would be go to the end. So that's ONS, and that would give you lemons. So it basically took the word melons, and by using Groovy's range operator and indexing, was able to extract the word lemons from it and assert that that is dyslexic because the equals equals there would be true. So kind of amusing. Another one that I pulled out, he said, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? And the answer is, I don't know and I don't care. Old dad joke. He says, to show that in Groovy, he declares our ignorance and apathy, then we calculate the difference and finally check the assertion. So by declaring a pair of ints without initializing them, they're initialized to 0. And then the ints know and care are both assigned the value ignorance minus apathy, which would also be 0. And 0, by the Groovy truth, as we say, is false. So we assert not know and not care. It's a short-circuiting logical and yet I don't know and I don't care works. So, yes. Easy peasy melon squeezy. I had to say that because otherwise it'd be lemon, right? What code did the programmer write to celebrate Groovy's 20th birthday? A hip hip array. Yes. I know. Okay, wait a minute. I needed that. Yeah, that one I definitely needed a rim shot on. Sorry about that, but okay. Groovy was created around 2003, I think, in that ballpark. Paul did an entire history of the language, and I really need to read it, but it's like 40 or 50 pages, and I just never seem to get around to it. But he did a great job. I learned about it at a user group meeting, a spring user group meeting in Philadelphia back in 2008, I think it was. I'd heard about Ruby on Rails in 2007 and tried to learn Ruby on Rails and realized I needed to learn Ruby. And at the time, I was so heavily invested in the Java world that Ruby was really a challenge for me. I didn't get a lot of it. That was before streams, lambdas, method references, a lot of things that Ruby did right away, which were all new to me. When I went to that user group meeting, Jason Rudolph was giving a talk on Groovy and more importantly on Grails. And I was the target audience because I knew the concepts from Ruby on Rails, and yet I was already a Spring and Hibernate person. So I just soaked it up. It was great. So I jumped in, and by 2010, I was wholly devoted to Groovy and Grails and Gradle and Spock and all these affiliated tools. And my first book, Making Java Groovy, came out. I wonder if it's got the copyright date still on it. Let's take a look. This is at Manning, September 2013. What that's not showing you is it took me probably 2 to 3 years to write that book, and it went through a couple of different companies too. But that's my first book, and believe it or not, I'm still getting royalties on it 10 years later. Second quarter 2023, I made $3.94. So I can't even say lunch was on me. I can't even say coffee was on me. But okay, hey, it's better than not getting $3.94. So be it. At any rate, Paul went overboard in his post, and I loved it. So I wish I had been able to come up with some ideas and some time to contribute, but I didn't get my act together. So, but great job on Paul's part. Let's move to our tweets and toots and skeets. One was the anniversary. Believe it or not, it's been a year since Elon Musk carried that sync into Twitter and announced it was all going to be different. There's been several review articles which are not kind, and nor should they be. And the one I added was the one from the Washington Post called "A Year Later, Musk's X is Tilting Right and Sinking." And the article is about Twitter's descent into hatred and madness. But the other casualty has been Elon's reputation. I am embarrassed to admit that I ever thought he knew anything about business at all. Or about anything, really. It's just he's so stupid. and narcissistic. I can't believe he just happened to be in the right place at the right time in more than one location and had enough seed capital to get away with it. Go figure. I still go there occasionally, but that's because I still follow some people who are excellent there. But as they say, screw that guy and the sink he rode in on. But there was some funny stuff there's still funny things to be found on the framework. This was quoted on Mastodon, but came from Twitter. It says, me, oh wow, this shop has everything my heart desires. Spooky shopkeeper. Yes, I will warn you. Every item comes with a price. Me, yes, I know how shops work. And then the reply from another person saying, spooky shopkeeper, the price may be more than you expect to pay. Me, yes, I know how U.S. taxes work too. And then another person replied, shopkeeper, increasingly exasperated. I'm trying to tell you that I'm evil and offering these wares with no regard for the harm they will do. Me, also increasingly exasperated. I know what capitalism is, too. I thought that was great. Happy Halloween. I titled this Winter is Coming. It was an image that said the annual meeting of the Summer Tires Club. Yes, a bunch of cars off the side of the road. Clearly that road is covered with black ice. Yikes. This one, a million monkeys on a million typewriters. Somebody tweeted, look, don't you understand? The human race is an endless number of monkeys, and every day we produce an endless number of words, and one of us actually wrote Hamlet, or already wrote Hamlet. It's like, yeah, actually, that's a good point. But that's not the kind of monkeys they're talking, whatever. It always reminds me of my favorite critical book review. Me, what'd you think of my book? You know how a million monkeys on a million typewriters would eventually produce the works of Shakespeare? Me, yes. Your book? 3 monkeys, 2 days. I love that. This one called Plant Dinosaurs. My daughter has advised that a plant dinosaur would be a triceratops. Thank you for your cooperation on this matter. I tried asking GPT-4 for other pun-based dinosaurs, and none of them were worth reporting. I mean, it just doesn't get humor. Really doesn't. The funniest things I've ever seen come out of GPT-4 was when it was trying to be serious or trying to do something I asked it which just turned out to be unintentionally funny. Like I once had it write a cover letter for a job application for a Java developer job written in pirate speak, and it was great. That was really funny. But again, it wasn't trying to. It was just trying to imitate pirate speak. Oh, well, it reminds me of the time when my son was only about 3 and we said we were going out to a restaurant. He referred to it as the dinner store. And I thought, yeah, that's perfect. That's great. This one, oh my goodness, this is AI in a nutshell. So an artist sitting there fishing with a little bucket of the fish they've caught, and along comes another cat with the label AI, starts fishing out of the bucket. Isn't that just AI in a nutshell? It learns from the work the artist already did. The artist already did all the filtering, and now we're up to that. Gets the point across, doesn't it? This I title Living on a Prayer because it's clearly song lyrics. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, Zeno doesn't care. So good old Zeno's paradox. I can't get from me to you, because in order for me to get from me to you, I have to go halfway to you, and then I have to go half of the rest of the distance, and then half of the rest of that distance, and half of the rest of that distance, and it never ends. But again, like the paradox, it's close enough that it doesn't matter, and in the limit you get there, and all of that. So apparently it turns out there's lots of Zeno's paradoxes. I didn't know, but at any rate, I put a link there to the Wikipedia page if you're interested. This was that original post that Paul King put up talking about the Groovy Dad Jokes, and he posted it on Mastodon. I took that picture. This is linked to that post if you're interested, with the Apache Groovy one-liners with reference to LangChain for J and parrots. The part I like here is the parrot is the symbol for LangChain, the Python framework used for AI applications. And of course, putting it on a coffee cup makes it LangChain for Java. So I thought that was perfect. So anyway, I'm working on that now, trying to understand that better. This post was from The Verge, said best product review ever. It said best printer 2023. Just buy this Brother laser printer that everyone has. It's fine. The Brother, whatever it is, will print return labels for online shopping, never run out of toner, and generally be a printer instead of the physical instantiation of a business model. And if you've ever had an inkjet printer, you know what they're talking about. You know, is that I don't use magenta, and yet you say you're out of magenta, you can't print anymore. But I just want to print in black and white. I don't care. You need magenta. It's just a business model where they hold you hostage to their printing toner subscriptions. Awful. Printers are so deeply evil. I don't even own one, but as I say, I'm not as cool as that sounds. My wife has one, and I can use that on the rare occasions I need one. But that review would make me consider the Brother printer. And the other Bat Gwyn picture that came up when I did my little search in DALL-E 3 is this one. This one says, photo of a penguin in the Antarctic adorned with a Dark Knight-inspired costume. The penguin stands vigilantly on an ice floe, surveying the icy expanse for any signs of mischief. I don't know about this one. The eyes look like they're closed. I'm not sure that penguin could see. And okay, there's a nice little chest plate, I guess, but I love the utility belt on the other one. I like the fact that that one was billowing in the wind. It's all right. Still, compared to DALL-E 2, this is excellent. That would have been by far the best thing I ever got out of DALL-E 2 if I got that. But that's good right there. So one thing I do know is that Bat Gwyn will not be confused by the fact that the South Pole is currently on daylight savings time. I skipped over that, but I actually have a demo of that from September 24th of this year, so just a month ago, until April 7th, I believe, of 2024. The South Pole, part of the Ross dependency, follows the time zone rules for New Zealand, which means for this part of the year, the South Pole is on daylight savings time. 6 months of daylight, 6 months of darkness, and yet they do daylight saving. Go figure. Last week I did that Making the Latest Java Features Work for You course in my software design course at Trinity. This week I have a 2-day Getting Started with Spring and Spring Boot course on the O'Reilly platform, my Trinity class. I'm also doing a talk called Managing Your Manager at Trinity. That ought to be fun. And there's an online conference called International Developer Career Day. I think it's actually scheduled for 2 days, I'm pretty sure. So I think that's Friday and Saturday or something like that. But at any rate, I'm giving a talk there as well. I think it's the Managing Your Manager talk as well there also. So hopefully I'll see some of you there. Be sure to say hi. Let me know if you're a jarhead. Thank you for listening and have a good week. See you next week, everybody.
Hey there, devs, it's time to tune in to Tales from the Jar, so let's begin. Java, copying it, spring on my Groovy Gradle, don't be shy. Tales from the Jar side, oh yeah. Crack open the code, let's take a ride. From design patterns to the latest trends, your weekly tech toast that never ends.